So our next guest has flown every helicopter pretty much known to man. His resume is incredibly impressive, starting in the Air Force and then flying for other services and then eventually civilians. So I'd like to welcome Dave to the stage. Hello, Dave. How are you today, sir?
Fine, fellas. How are you guys doing? Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks for being
Dave.
here.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah,
we hear you fine. You look great. I see the stink bug hanging from your ceiling, and you told me you've flown all the helicopters, but have never flown anything fixed wing. Is that except
you got 2 hours in the P-51, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome.
I went through OTS, and at the time, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. Okay, so this is the 70s. I'm studying aviation. Didn't have the money to get a private or even get an orientation flight, but I studied lift and drag and all this other stuff, and go to OTS and get a pilot slot. And then when I'm told it's helicopters, and I did not know a friggin' thing about a helicopter. And at the time, the Air Force was sending guys directly to helicopter school with no fixed wing. They didn't do that before, and now they don't do it. So I never had an opportunity. Well, I did have an opportunity later in my career, but it was very, very unlikely I would get the tense that they would take a helicopter guy and send him to fixed wing. And at the time, a helicopter guy going to fixed wing, the Air Force Pentagon said you can only do tankers and bombers. They wouldn't put you in a fighter. So I stayed helicopters.
Dave, what did you what if you didn't start in a T-37, I think back then? What was your primary trainer?
It was called the TH-55. It was made by Hughes. It was had a 360 horsepower IO piston engine.
Oh,
okay. The thing looked like an OH-6, but smaller.
Oh, okay.
It would probably fit in your garage. And they had it inside a building for you to learn the pre-flight. It had, it was 2 persons, and we got 50 hours in it. That's it right there. Okay. Except they were painted orange. So if you crashed, they could find you in the Alabama,
I love it.
Was this at Fort Rucker? So were you with the Army?
Well, there was an Air Force squadron at Fort Rucker, and we had a class of 6 guys, and we were attached to an Air Force or an Army class. And the Army class that we were attached to were officers, and then there was a sister class of warrant officers. And we really didn't intermingle too much. The officers did, but we didn't intermingle with the warrants. So I did 50 hours there, and all in civilian instructors. Actually, it was DOS Aviation, and and then we moved on to Huey's.
Did you have any flight time?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, no. I took the AFO-QT test, and I don't know what I got, but it said you're going to be a helicopter pilot. And I was so naive that during OTS, toward the end, I went over to headquarters Air Force Randolph personnel, not even a second lieutenant yet, and asked for a transfer to fixed wing. And the guy looked at me and said, "Get out of here. You might be able to apply after your first or second gate." So I went down to
the first time.
Got my nickel ride.
Nickel ride. Is that what they call it? Nickel ride? Tell me about the first time you hovered.
It was so funny. I soloed at 12 hours, and it just came on. I had one instructor, an old gentleman, an old good old boy from Alabama, okay, and he was kind of a screamer, and I didn't do too well with him. Matter of fact, I got it down, and I was able to get a new instructor, and this guy was a grandpa. He actually flew B-17s over Europe in World War II, and he's teaching people primary helicopter flying. But I don't know, it just all of a sudden the light bulb came on, and it was like, hey, I can do this. But the nickel ride, you went out, and my first instructor, I'm from up outside of West Point, so I had never been down south before, so that was a whole cultural thing. he's got a cup, and I think it's coffee, and he's spitting in it. Never saw that before. And we took the doors off this thing. And we take off. It's like, man. Again, other than being in a commercial airliner, I had never flown before.
Wow.
But it just seemed to work. And one day, we're out at the stage field, and my instructor said, I'm going to go out. I'm going to get out. You can go ahead and solo. Do 3 turns in the pattern and come back. But hovering just, I don't know how to explain it. It just, the light bulb came on.
The hover
Yeah.
button. So
Yeah,
so
the
this
hover
is
button.
this is
Yeah,
1979. Where'd you go after that?
79. Went to Homestead. Mover.
Yeah.
Went to Homestead. We got to, toward the end of flight school at Fort Rucker, we did a month-long thing called Air Force Unique. And it was Hueys equipped with TACANs, because the Army did not have TACANs.
Wow.
And we had to learn TACANs because that's what the Air Force did. And then went to survival school up at Washington State at Fairchild, and then went out to Albuquerque and learned the N model course, took that, and learned Air Force search and rescue procedures and some other things. And then they sent me down the Homestead. And the 31st TAC Fighter Wing was there, and a reserve unit. There must have been 105 F-4s on that field.
Wow.
And some of them, they were Ds and Es. Some of them had stars on the splitter plate from Vietnam. Yeah. And this leads me to the story that I teased you with, Mover. It was 1982, and you guys know about this. You know the aerostat down at Cudjoe Key, the blimp that's
I've heard of
hanging
it.
from
Yes.
Cudjoe Key?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
In the key? Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it broke loose one time, and they didn't know what to do with it. But at night, it descended, and some fisherman tied it off to the back of his boat. You know where I'm going with this. The next morning, the helium heats up, and it starts to pull the boat out of the water.
Oh my gosh.
And the guy cuts it off. Okay. And yeah, exactly. Okay. Homestead, we were a detachment of 3 Hueys. We had 7 officers, a bunch of enlisted. And at the other end of our building was the alert facility. And they had 4 F-4s on alert, either Ds or Es. They were manned by the instructors from the 31st, because the 31st was doing what I was told was RTU. They were training guys. Yep, that's a picture of it. So I think it was 1982. Yeah, I'm pretty certain. They launched 2 F-4s because this thing was becoming a hazard to navigation. They launched 2 F-4s and they shot it down. They used
the F4 has the first balloon
AIM-7s,
shells.
and
They hit it with a heater or the gun?
no, they used the AIM-7 Sparrow, a radar.
Wow.
And everybody knew about this. This was going on for about 36 hours, and they finally decided that's how they were going to get rid of it. So there was a lot of excitement on the base. And sure enough, when those guys came back, the crew chief and the alert facility and the hangar painted a balloon on the engine splitter.
Perfect.
On the left
Oh,
side.
that's awesome.
And that was, yeah.
I'd claim it.
I don't know.
I would totally claim
I don't
that.
know whether they ever found out why it broke loose.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So where'd you go after Homestead?
But we down Andrews flying VIPs, and they had a mission there. Yeah. They had a mission there to evacuate DC, all of these VIPs in case of, a launch of a ballistic missile. So we had places we had to go fly them. We did that, and the Army had a portion of it, and the Marines had a portion of it, and we had a portion of it. But yeah.
Did you have to dress up to fly them around?
Job was, well, for a while we were wearing, I think they were class Ds or Cs, the open collared shirt and pants.
Oh, wow.
And then they got us some blue looking flights.
Okay.
Yeah. And we flew single pilot. We flew with the flight engineer in the left seat and the pilot in the right. And these guys were really good. Most of them were like senior master sergeants. They had medals from their, shoulder down to their waist. They did a lot of the search and rescue in Vietnam, with the jollies and the super jollies and all of that. Yeah, they were really very good. They were our navigators, basically. And we flew 2 sorties a day just for training. And at the time, we would go out to Dulles Airport, which was not very busy at all. And they wanted movement. The FAA wanted aircraft out there, to keep the power open and everything. And we teach our flight engineers how to fly the aircraft.
Oh, cool.
Some of them were pretty good. There was a Sergeant Rodriguez, Rufus Rodriguez, I remember. He could do a touchdown auto on that Huey. It was,
Jeez.
yeah.
Dave, did you get to carry anybody or not famous, but high ranking, or did anybody ever come? I mean, did you ever carry anybody out of DC?
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of times they would want to ride from the Pentagon over to Andrews to get on a fixed wing. And actually, my first VIP after I got checked out was the SecDef, Casper Weinberger,
Wow.
But, and that was basically it. Did a lot of training and standing alert, things like that. So, yeah.
Was that
down
just
at
the 3-year
we
tour?
supported the Water Survival School. It was a little over 3.5.
Okay.
It was a little over 3.5. I was there. Yeah.
So what at Homestead? We've cut you off 3 times. I'm sorry.
Too. So at Homestead, we supported the Water Survival School. If you were in an aircraft that had an ejection seat, you went to Water Survival School at Homestead instead of the big pool up at Fairchild. And basically, we didn't fly on Mondays. Tuesdays, water survival instructors would parachute out of our UE into Biscayne Bay while the students watched. Then the next day, all the students got to parasail, disconnect, float to the water, to the surface of Biscayne Bay, get into their raft, and sit there. And then we would come out, they'd signal us with the mirrors, all these flashing mirrors all over the place. And we'd come out and we'd pick them up and out of the water so they could experience the spray and getting onto the force penetrator with the flotation collar and all of that. So we'd pick them up 15 feet, put them back down, go to the next one, just like little ducks. And that's basically
the mirror
what we
actually
did.
works.
They did classes. Oh, yeah, the mirror works and C-dye marker works. Yeah, the mirror really works. But they did 2 classes a week, and anybody who had ejection seat aircraft, that's what they did. So, funny story about that. We had a flight engineer. The flight engineer would sit in the doorway of the UE with his feet out, and we were all very experienced. They always carried a can of whipped cream, and if the water survival instructors mentioned to us that a student, and they wore football helmets. Okay, this is real high tech football helmets. If they had a student that was really being a jerk, they'd let us know, and they were numbered on that. And they'd say, "Hey, can you give special treatment to number 5? He's coming up." Flight engineer would lift them all the way up to the doorway, not bring him in, and fill his football helmet full of whipped cream because he was being some kind of jerk or whatever. So, yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
don't piss off the flight engineer.
And then about once a month, you guys would appreciate this. About once a month, we would take a group of F4 pilots up to MacDill for their, I guess, reevaluation of altitude chamber. They had to do the altitude chamber, what, fellas, every 2 years?
I think it's
something like that. We'd fly them up. Yeah. Anyway, we'd fly them up to MacDill. We always flew with the doors open in the back. They did not like that.
Messes up the hair.
In the back of the we would put the cargo doors all the way back. Yeah. Well, and we're at 500 feet going up the Everglades to MacDill. We didn't have air conditioning. Those guys never liked that. And they were strapped in, and the flight engineers would give him a hard time because he'd get out of his seat with his gunner belt and sit in the doorway with his feet hanging out, looking out, But yeah.
That's awesome.
That is
I
awesome.
have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When you got to your unit, did you guys have weather minimums? If you were a new F-16 or Hornet driver?
702.
Could you go out in any weather, or you had minimum?
You had minimum.
702.
Yeah.
Well, if we were on the ship.
For an inexperienced guy, 702, 500 a mile and a half, then 301.
Not in the Navy. It was 200.5 or 301. I think on shore, and then at the boat, it was if they launched you, you were going to recover. It didn't matter what the weather was. Yeah. So if you find yourself at the end of the cat stroke, it's like, well, whatever the weather is, we're landing.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. A few months before
Did you
I
guys
got
in the helo?
Well, we were dual we always flew dual pilot. So we had regular weather minimums, but it had nothing to do with how experienced we were. We were always dual pilot.
Okay.
And our UEs didn't have an ILS, so we had to use a PAR if we did any precision work. And some bases didn't have a PAR or a controller. Homestead did, Andrews did. Other places, they got a waiver from the requirement to have precision approaches during training. Yeah. So I can't remember the minimums, but I think it might be just whatever your approach minimums would be. You know, you could take off as long as you could get back in on an approach. That was it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
before about 3 months before I got to Homestead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, we had that Huey was a Ford F-150 pickup truck. We did everything. We carried all sorts of stuff. We had a requirement to carry a sling load. So they built a 500-pound hockey puck, and we had training requirements to be able to carry that thing. About 3 months before I got there, they had an incident. And the UE had two ways to drop a cargo sling under the aircraft. You had a button on the cyclic, pinky button, or you had a little pedal between the two anti-torque pedals to manually do it. Well, they had a guy visiting from headquarters, rescue, and he was getting some flight time and some currency. And they picked up the 500-pound hockey puck, and they took off from Homestead down at the west end where it was in the grass. And they did a pattern. They came out over the base, and they dropped the hockey puck onto a gas station parking lot. Fortunately, didn't hit anybody, but made a hell of a hole in the ground.
Oh, I bet.
And the guy swore he did not touch it with his pinky. So, yeah, safety came out.
Just blew.
They had to check the wiring and all, I don't know, ED and model UEs and everything like that. But yeah, I saw a picture of it. I think he touched it because they ended up modding that little pinky button with a cover around it. So you had to lift the cover and then hit the button. But yeah, what a hole. They were so lucky. I think it was a Exxon station or Esso station. Missed all the cars, missed the building, landed in the parking lot, right through the asphalt and everything.
So you went to Creech after your VIP tour?
Yeah. That's why the stink bug is up on the wall, hanging from the ceiling.
Oh, tell us about that.
That was one of them. Well, I got orders to go there. I knew of the unclassified missions, range support at Nellis, Red Flag, DOE, nuclear weapons testing, but processed in at Nellis. And one afternoon, one of the processing centers, I went into a room with a couple of people. And then we went into another room. And then we went into a skiff. We sat down, like, whoa, what's going on here? And they showed us an aerial refueling film of the stealth fighter behind a 135. And they said, that's what you're going to be doing. So we did search and rescue for them. We stood alert at night while they flew up at Tonopah. Okay.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah.
So you did a lot.
Got
of
a chance to go up to Tonopah, and they had facial recognition and an eye reader and everything, and got to go in the hangar and see the thing, sit in the cockpit. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So you left there
and then on the other side of the
base.
Yeah. Downsizing. Okay. And I had made my second gate and I was going to a desk job. They closed the squadron. The major general at Nellis didn't want helicopters anymore. That's why we were at Creech. He wouldn't allow helicopters on station permanently at Nellis. So I always wanted to stay in the cockpit. That's what I wanted to do. So I went over to the Coast Guard and flew out of NAS New Orleans. Mover.
Yeah. The Dolphin?
What'd you fly?
The Dolphin, the Coast Guard Dolphin.
How'd you like that?
I tell people today, if you want to be a helicopter pilot, I loved it. Those guys are crazy. You think that stuff that they do up in Alaska is crazy? They do that all over. I'll tell you a quick story. I got checked out in that thing, and I'm working SAR, And we get a call at, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning, 00. Coast Guard doesn't have weather minimums. You take off. And this aircraft had a flight management system that was amazing. It took me 2 years to learn all about the flight management system. But anyway, case to go out and pick up a sailor on a motor vessel, big ship, coming up to Houston. So we take off at 2 in the morning, 00. Things got 4-axis autopilot, auto hover, all radar, all sorts of stuff. Plug all this information in, the thing goes out, does an intercept, put the ship's course and speed in. It knows your course and speed, and it goes right there.
Wow.
They had a procedure to get down to the water. And one of the most dangerous things for rescue helicopters is from cruise altitude, 500 feet, whatever, to get down to a hover at night. And we didn't have goggles. We didn't have NVGs at the time. Because in a helicopter, if you're not careful, you'll start to back up, descending to the water because you can't see anything. And the Air Force had lost some helicopters years before in that. But the Coast Guard had a computer program that did this for you, hands off. And they also had a manual way to do it with a stopwatch or the clock in the cockpit and calling out altitudes and airspeeds. So we get over top, can't see. I mean, it's IFR. We can't see anything. Can't see the water, can't see the sky, no lights. Plug this in. This thing does a teardrop approach, comes down to a 30-foot hover over the water in the middle of the Gulf. We still can't see the water. Flight mech is in the code, was what they use the name in, or is the name for flight engineer in the Coast Guard. He's in the doorway with an Aldous lamp, and we can beat down from a hover 3-foot increments. Can't see the ship. The ship is 800 feet in front of us, according to the radar. We got the landing light forward. We get down to 20 feet and we can finally see the water. Nothing else. We start slowly moving forward. Ship is coming to us. Still can't see the ship. I'm like, the pucker factor is like, whoa, way up. I'm wondering what happens if a wave comes and we're at 20 feet, you know? And that later happened years, not too long ago, with an H-60 up in Alaska. A wave took them out while they were hovering. Anyway, we get, all of a sudden, we start to see this black thing in front of us with the landing light. It's the friggin' size of the side of the boat. We're 20 feet, 30 feet in front of the boat. All we see is this black steel wall. So we use an increase, decrease switch, and we climb up at 3-foot increments. And finally, we land on a hatch cover. And Corpsman gets out, takes care of the guy, puts him in the aircraft. We take off, IFR, all the way back to New Orleans, land at a hospital. But that was those guys got a set. They really do. They really do. To trust all of that avionics, and, you know, we just followed the radar, and it was that good. But yeah, it's crazy. They do some amazing work. I tell people, if you don't want to shoot anybody from a helicopter, go to the.
Dave, was that your favorite helicopter?
Go ahead, Gonky.
Was that your favorite helicopter, the Delphine?
Kind of hard to tell. I got the most hours in it. I did like the twin engine Huey, but yeah. I guess so. I've flown about 10 different aircraft. It's kind of hard to really tell, you know. But we did some pretty. Yeah. The Coast Guard unofficial model was you had to go. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you left the Coast Guard and went to the Army after that?
Well, the Berlin Wall ended. All of a sudden, the Coast Guard had too many pilots. I wasn't an academy grad, so I got rifted. And I was fortunate that I got recruited by the Marlyand State Police to be a civilian helicopter pilot for them because they had Dolphins. So I went up here to Maryland and flew for them, and I wanted to get my 20-year letter. And there's very few Air Force Guard or Reserve helicopter units. So I went into the Army Reserve or Guard and flew for them until I got my 20-year letter, you know, and I flew for the Marlyand State Police. I was their first civilian pilot who wasn't a former police officer, and they flew a pilot with a medic. That's how they did it. Yeah. And I flew for them. Sure. Yeah.
Dave, did you have to do like the police academy or anything? I mean, you carried a badge and a gun, right?
No. No, I did not carry a badge or a gun. I didn't have to go through the academy. Matter of fact, we could drive. There was a group of us, and now it's all that way. They eventually went to all of it because I needed military experience because we were doing single pilot IFR operations. And their trooper pilots that had gone through the 2-week instrument course in Houston weren't up to stuff. But that's a good point, Gonky. I never wore my uniform in public. I did not go into a 7-Eleven with a flight suit that said Marlyand State Police because I had no way to defend myself. So we could drive an unmarked police car, and we did from different bases. Okay, and they did give me a bulletproof, but I only needed to use it once, and I put it underneath the seat. So no, I did not carry a gun.
So you couldn't arrest anybody. You were just kidding.
Going to a 7-Eleven. You know, go ahead. That's right. That's right. Our medics were troopers and medics. And if we did law enforcement missions like high-speed chases or whatever, the fact that we had a law enforcement officer on the aircraft was legal. Yeah.
What'd you fly for the Army?
So I started out flying F-model Cobras, and
oh Jesus,
they got retired, and I flew Blackhawks, A-model Blackhawks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
was the Cobra
Cobra
fun?
was fun. Yeah, it was really fun, and it was a really good instrument aircraft. It was very stable. It had a rudimentary heads up, which was pretty cool. I always thought that I would kill myself in it by pre-flighting because the damn thing was so tall. When you had to get up to check the Jesus nut on top of the rotor system, I thought I was going to fall off the damn thing, you know. And the Black Hawk, I didn't get a lot of time in that. I got my 20 years or whatever, 20 plus. That was a lot of fun. That thing, this was just an A model, and it had friggin' so much power for a helicopter. You know, we would take off with a full load of fuel and 4 people on board, and the instructor would roll an engine back, and you didn't even notice it. It would take off from a hover like that. So yeah.
Wow.
Wow. How long did you do the Maryland thing, and why'd you stop? Was it a retirement?
Well, I did. Yeah, it was. I got hired in '93, and I retired in 2009. And
wow,
we had an accident. We had an accident a couple of years, well, maybe a year or so before. And it was a retired trooper, wasn't strong on instruments. Some civilian operators turned the flight down, and he took it. And he crashed outside of Andrews and killed him. They had 2 patients on board, so they killed 5. 1 patient survived. And after that happened, and I'd like your opinion on this, all of us military guys said, well, we need to practice more instruments because it was an inadvertent IMC instrument, inadvertent IMC accident. The powers to be, who were not pilots, said, no, you can't fly instruments ever again. And that just, a bunch of us said, that's crazy. When you have an accident.
That sounds like a government reaction.
You want to train to prevent it from happening again. And their thing was, yeah, exactly, Mover. And I just said, you know what? The nights were getting hard. And I said, I got my retirement out of that. And they wouldn't let us fly instruments. So I retired and took a few months off and didn't know what to do and went back and did it again for a civilian operator this time. So
wow.
I'm a glutton for punishment. I just love flying.
Did you fly the Black Hawk too?
I really do. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of talking, and I've got a couple of questions for you guys. Mover, what would you like to see in an F-16 that you don't have now? I'm just curious.
Mover in it.
Yeah, me.
Mover in it.
Me, ESA radar, and about 10,000 more pounds of fuel.
Oh, okay. Really like it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's the best jet out there. Sorry, Gonky.
Did it have any
hard to be
bad
humble at
things
9Gs
that you had to be careful of? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be careful not to put yourself to sleep because pulling 9Gs hurts. You know, I flew the Block 30. The radar wasn't all that great. You know, single engine. So if you lose an engine, you know, you've got only a few options left. But it's a great airplane. But wait, hold on now. We didn't get.
Right.
Your career is still storied and not over. I've got the list here. So what did you do after Air Med, right? So you flew an EC-135, and did you fly the Black Hawk?
No, I was still in the Maryland Guard, and I had gotten, I don't know, 21, 22 years, and I retired from there, got my letter, and I went to work for Air Methods at a Hagerstown Airport, and we flew an EC-135 medevac. We did hospital, we did road medevacs, and we did single pilot IFR. That was another nice aircraft. It had a 3-axis autopilot, great flight director, great stabilization system. Yeah. So, and then night shift, really hard. You know, they let you sleep, but at 2:00 in the morning, you get called to take a mission. And it just took my brain longer and longer to process the weather and all of this other stuff. And it was like, you know what? That's it. That was fine. So,
yeah.
And then I fly part-time now for a fellow that I used to fly. Go ahead.
What do you fly now?
I'm a SIC in an S-76, Sikorsky S-76. Yeah.
Wow.
Just part-time, trying to stay into it. That's all.
Yeah.
So we do have working for this guy for many years. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. There's a delay, so that's why there's a little bit of a lag, helicopter lag.
Oh, okay. For the state police here in Frederick, Maryland, where AOPA is headquartered next door, I got to know this guy, Mike, and he had a Dolphin, and he said, "You want to work for me part-time?" And I said, "Sure." So that's when I started to fly for him. He had the Dolphin. We did 135 ops, did NASCAR, did casinos, did New York VIPs. And after 9/11, he sold the Dolphin, was out of business for a little bit. Then he picked up an S-76. And I've never gone to school for S-76 training, so I fly as a SIC for him now.
Wow.
Whenever he needs
Is it
me.
fast?
Mostly out of yeah, it's about 155 knots is VNE.
Wow.
Great IFR platform. Great IFR platform. Yeah. And everybody loves it. That's if you're flying VIPs or charter, you know, people with millions of dollars, they want to be in an S-76. Yeah.
It's awesome. Janitor's back says, since you've flown all the helicopters, which is better, Airwolf or Blue Thunder?
Well, I don't know. I watched the Airwolf series. I remember that, Blue Thunder. It's Hollywood. You know, it is Hollywood. So, you know, I don't know what to say.
Do you?
What David's trying to say is Airwolf.
That's what I heard. Yeah. Do you have any cool cop chase stories? If you were Marlyand State Police, did you do anything fun with them, like high-speed chases?
They were a blast. They were so much fun. We did a bunch of them, and I always enjoyed them. They gave us no training on those, okay? And they really didn't give us much training. You know, I'd done medevac before and landed on roads and all sorts of stuff like that. But I'll give you two quick stories. Working one night, listening to the scanner down in Montgomery County, south of Frederick. The sheriff's department's chasing a guy on a motorcycle. I got my medic with me, Carl, kind of quiet night. I said, "Carl, why don't we go airborne and see what we can do?" So we get airborne, nice clear night, again, no goggles, and we can see the motorcycle on a state road heading our way. So Carl's on the radio. We have an infrared camera and we have a night sun. I plot a little bit of a intercept, and we intercept he comes off the state road and he gets on the interstate, and I pick him up right then and there, and Carl turns on the night sun. The guy stops the motorcycle, gets off, puts his hands on the ground, spread eagle, while we're hovering, and he surrendered to us. And we stayed there until the sheriff and the state police and the whole army came in to capture the guy. That was really cool.
That's Airwolf.
Really cool.
That's Airwolf.
That's straight out of Airwolf. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly. But a lot of times on the high speed chases, we would let the troopers in the car, the law enforcement in the car, when there was an intersection, you know, the guy's making a right turn, he's in the next lane, you're coming up to this, coming up to that, you know. But we had another instance again. Carl and I did a lot of work together. One night, local sheriff is looking for some car thieves. So we get airborne. and they have us search this huge farm field with the infrared camera. He's doing that. I'm using the night sun, and the camera's pretty good. We're at about 500 feet, and we're looking at a tree line or shrub line separating two fields, and he picks up a hot spot. And we've learned that it could be a deer laying, could be a manhole cover, sewer, whatever. But I'm hovering about 30 feet, and Carl's got him on the FLIR. I can't see him in the thick brush, but I got the night sun on him. The sheriff's deputy with K9 is off in another field, and all of a sudden Carl sees an arm move, and he goes, "He's there." I said, "Great." He goes, "Why don't you land and let me get him?" I said, "No, I'm not going to let you land. You got no backup, and we don't know what this guy has." So we hold him there. Sheriff's deputy, get him on the radio, and they let the dog go. And you can hear in the radio, from the sheriff's deputy's radio, the perpetrator going, "Not the dog, not the dog." And the dog went in there, and like that, it was just hilarious. We got back to the base, our base, and they came by and dropped off a pizza for us. So that was really nice. Yeah.
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 That's a good looking helicopter.
We ended up, yep, that's actually that's Trooper 3. That's where I worked most of the time. We were all over the state. Yeah.
Did this have the same autopilot as the Coast Guard one you were talking about?
No, this only had a 3-axis autopilot, pitch, roll, and yaw. It had a digital flight director and an analog stabilization system. So they didn't always talk together. The Coast Guard had digital on both sides, but it was a good IFR platform. And Carl and I actually worked the day they caught the DC sniper.
Oh, wow.
That was the one time I put the bulletproof vest under my seat, because we heard on the radio, and they were at a truck stop about 10 miles from our base, and we went airborne. They just had us orbit, turned off all the lights and everything. And we didn't know it at the time, but the FBI showed up in a 412, and they were completely blacked out. And we were there in case of a medical issue. We were not going to, do anything law enforcement. But they caught the guys, and we went back to the base, refueled and got ready for the next mission. FBI showed up in this 412, Bell 412. Fellas, I never saw a rifle so friggin' big in my entire life. It was an anti-sniper rifle that they were going to shoot out of the side of the helicopter. Okay, it wasn't until years later that I got to see a 50 cal, rifle. That's what this thing looked like.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah. That was pretty.
Garrett asked, have you ever been in an HH-60 Jayhawk?
Yeah. I've been in it, but I've never flown in one. No.
Gotcha. Have you ever flown a Hughes 500?
No, I wish I did. I think they're really cool, and I would love to learn or get some time in it. And I've also never flown a tandem helicopter like a Chinook, because that's a little bit different the way that whole thing works.
Yeah.
Chinooks actually fly and are more stable flying sideways than forward and backwards.
Wow. So
it's because one rotor, but if they're flying sideways, they're in clean air all the time, which is kind of weird. I also never got a chance to fly a tilt rotor. I'd love to do that after they get it fixed.
Now, you said you're a CFI. Have you done a lot of teaching? Have you taught in like R-44 Robinson helicopters or anything?
No. I was an instructor in the Air Force. I was an instructor in the Coast Guard, and I got those ratings in the Air Force. They actually let me use the aircraft to get ratings. And then I was an instructor with MSP. But we have a flight school down the ramp from us at Frederick Airport, and that's what they do. But I give you a lot of credit, Mover, for flying one of those, because they're awful tiny, and I don't know that much about it. I know you have to have a special training and all sorts of that.
SFAR-73.
Yeah.
Do you have any, do you fly for fun at all, or just the SIC stuff?
Just the SIC stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see from the crowd. John says, the air unit and you pilots are angels over our shoulders, and we can't thank you enough for your service. Thank you, Dave, from all of us boots on the ground.
Well, I really appreciate that, but we're just one small chain from the first guy that shows up at an accident to the doctor at the hospital. You know, we just do one little small part. And I have a lot of respect and admiration for the ground troopers. We would come back from Baltimore at shock trauma, where we took most of our patients, 3 o'clock in the morning on the interstate, a lone trooper's making a traffic stop. I think that's freaking scary. I really do.
Yeah.
We would kind of hang around, orbit, you know, because you just never know, you know. So
has Maryland switched helicopters? I thought I read that they're getting AW-139. Are they going to the Leonardo helicopter?
Yeah, they bought a bunch of AW-139s, and it's not been always. It's kind of overkill, really, for what they want. I mean, it's a huge helicopter. They had to. It wasn't certified for single pilots, so they had to hire a whole nother group of pilots. So they fly 2 pilots. They fly 2 paramedics in the back. The pilots are still civilian, but the paramedics are troopers. It's got some issues, operational issues. Ending is, if they fly it over a certain gross weight, their maintenance doubles as far as inspections, and they're not really good for off-road. I mean, we would land in fields all the time. And I understand they don't do that because of the footprint and how heavy the helicopter is. But I didn't get, I retired before that was coming. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Steve says, how
Very
bad is
expensive
static
to operate.
electricity?
Yeah.
How bad is static electricity from rotor wash over the water, or is it not an issue?
It can be. It can be really an issue. Over water or over land, when it's cold and dry and not a lot of humidity, you have to let the rescue device, hook, basket, whatever, touch the ground and discharge. Yeah, we used to teach that. Because of my Coast Guard experience, I set up the rescue operations at MSP and did a lot of the training. But yeah, you'll get yourself a good shock. I guess there's a video of a Navy H-53 doing vert rep on behind a ship. I don't know what kind of ship it was. And a crewman on the deck didn't let the hook touch. And he got such a shock. He got knocked on his butt and hurt pretty bad, because it's the size of the helicopter that creates the static electricity. Little helicopter, little static electricity. 53s, Gonky, they're big helicopters.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the new Halo Next pilot training program that they're doing?
I don't know enough about it. I know, I really don't. I understand, though, now everybody goes to T6s, and then you can go to helicopters or bombers.
Yeah.
So people come out of there with, some fixed wing. I don't know enough about it. I have to do some research for the next time if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Steve says you should review Deadly Encounter. Awesome helicopter flying. Have you seen that movie, Dave?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
I will look for that.
Yeah, I don't know that one. Bob says in a 53 squadron. Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
He used to do externals a lot. The static discharge was no joke, I guess, in a 53, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they used to tell us to ground it.
Really?
You had to ground it first before you.
Nothing to let the hook or the force penetrator, whatever, touch the ground, and then go ahead and grab it. And I know on the 53s and on the 47s, the guys on the ground have this shepherd's crook thing with a wire that's, clipped to, like you ground when you refuel. It's kind of clipped to the vehicle or whatever. So the charge goes from the helicopter through the shepherd's crook and then down into the Humvee that you'll lift in or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Modman says, you lose your engine. Would you rather be in an R-44 and auto rotate down, or a Cessna 172 and glide down? Oh boy. I'd say R-44 if I had to, or a Huey. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, that's your answer, or that's your question, Mover. I don't have any time in a 44, and I've only got a little bit of time in a 172 with my son. So I really don't know. I would do it in a Huey. Yeah.
Is it true that the Huey had so much energy that you could take back off and turn around? I mean, you could in an auto?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Instructors could do an auto rotation and touch down and have so much energy they could pick it back up to a hover. That was a high inertia rotor system. Those friggin' blades were very, very heavy. And Bell took a Jet Ranger and put weights on the on the blade tips of the two blade system for an experiment. And auto rotation from a hover with no forward airspeed, Mover, you know this, is really dangerous. Okay. There's a dead man's curve there. You want to have some airspeed. They eliminated that whole dead man's curve from the chart with this Jet Ranger with this mod on it. The problem, they decided they didn't want to go commercially with it because they would have to rebuild the gearbox and all of the head because the blades were even heavier. Yeah. That little TH-55, though, that was not a good auto rotation aircraft because the blades were lightweight, but the shape of the fuselage was like an egg. Well, if you screwed up the auto at the bottom, you'd roll just like an egg, like a US 500. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So even the Dolphin, I remember doing autos in the Coast Guard Dolphin or the MSP Dolphin, and we would hit rates of 4,000 feet per minute on descent. And if you're only flying at 1,500 feet, not a lot of time to finish that auto at the bottom. Those lightweight blades, they don't have any energy. All of them now, Black Hawks, EC-135s, everybody goes to lightweight blades because they don't have to build the massive structure on the rotor head and everything. But the UE was good for training for that reason. Yeah.
What was the fastest helicopter you've flown?
The Dolphin, the civilian Dolphin that Mike had, didn't have a FLIR and anything like that. And with a tailwind of about 30 knots, I got up to a ground speed of 230.
Oh my God, on a helicopter? That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That Dolphin had a VNE of 165, but
wow.
Yeah, that was about it.
Ryan says, how difficult is it to switch back and forth, fixed wing and rotary? What's the hardest part? I did it in the T-38 and the R-44. It's just like driving different cars. You just do whatever that day is what you do. I don't think there's any difficulty. Dave, I know you didn't fly fixed wing.
Yeah,
so
I really don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I did take a fella. Okay.
No, go ahead.
One time at MSP, I took up a fella. He was the editor of Aviation Week, David North, and he was a fixed wing guy. Navy A4, flew everything under the sun. And as an editor, he flew the SR-71, he flew MiGs, all sorts of stuff. But he worked a shift with us, and I put him in the left seat. We did a medevac, and I thought he was going to faint because we landed in an intersection between in downtown Gaithersburg with all these wires and stuff. And he looks at me and he goes, "How are you going to get out?" I said, "Well, I got in. I should be able to get out." But anyway, I let him have the controls coming back, and I let him do the landing. He never slowed down. He pointed the helicopter down, nose down, and we're screaming to the ground. And I'm saying, "David, you got to slow down. We got to come to a hover." Okay. And he never slowed down because he wasn't used to it. You know, if we had a tail rotor emergency in the Dolphin or any other hydraulic issue, because of it had wheels, we could do a run-on landing. And that was my only time to be an airline pilot or an airplane pilot, because we would practice run-on landings, touchdown at 90 knots, up to 120 on these little wheels, 3 feet off the ground. I thought I was on a skateboard going down. Like, yeah. So I really don't know how hard it is to go back and forth.
What advice do you have for an aspiring pilot that wants to fly helicopters in 2023?
I really would say, if you want to shoot guns, do the Army thing. If you want to do rescue and all sorts of stuff like that, do the Coast Guard. One of the things I learned in the Air Force as a helicopter pilot back then was we were the stepchild of the stepchild of the stepchild. Okay. They didn't have a full bird colonel who was a helicopter pilot in the Air Force when I was in, So it was, they needed you when they needed you, but it was not a real great career path. But in the Coast Guard, the helicopter guys are at the top of the pyramid, and those C-130 guys, they're at the bottom, because that's what you see on TV is, the guys up in the North Atlantic or, Alaska and stuff. So, that's what I would suggest. And if you go Army, I remember looking at one of your podcasts, you were talking about the warrants. That's what you do. because the warrants will do the flying. The officers, not so much. Yeah.
You stayed an officer throughout your career, so you did a transfer every single time.
You guys got a minute for a last story?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Go with your story.
All right. 2 hours of duel. 2 hours of duel in a P-51.
Yeah.
Okay? Worked a whole bunch of overtime at Air Methods. At Air Methods, you know, working 9 on and 2 off. Had all this extra money. Everything was looking good. I said, I got to do something for myself. So I contacted Stallion 51, and they provide P-51 training for your letter of authorization. And they offer rides. The guy's name is Lee Louderback. He's probably got more P-51 time than anybody on the planet now. And he has 2 P-51s, dual cockpit, full dual cockpit. So make an appointment, go down there. Got this fella, F-15 pilot. He's going to be my instructor. Homer was his nickname or call sign. Great guy. Leading up to this, I had never done acrobatics before. And I'm thinking to myself, I better not get sick. So not getting sick. Go through the whole brief, get the flight suit. I'm on a flight suit. We go out to the aircraft. I got to wear a parachute. I'd never worn a parachute before. Oh, what did I get myself into? Get in the aircraft. I'm in the back. Homer says, I'll start it. You can only start it from the front. You can shut it down from the back, but you have throttles and the whole bit. Get in there, get all strapped in, the helmet. Tomcat, plane captain. Tomcat comes to me and he hands me a bag and he goes, don't you dare throw up. Don't you dare throw up in my P-51. I said, okay. Start up, take off. At 1,000 feet, he gives me the aircraft. Hey, this is pretty nice. You know, sounds beautiful. P-51, little sensitive in pitch. So you're always playing with the pitch trim wheel. Aileron trim, nothing. On takeoff, 7 degrees right rudder because of that, the torque, the P factor on that big engine. So we go down south of Kissimmee, climb up to 800 feet, and, you know, they got a GoPro camera to film in this and the whole bit. And Homer says, let's start out with some stalls. I said, okay. Well, we do a stall, and I'm pulling back, and I'm slowing down to like 60 knots. And I'm about 80 degrees nose up. And for a helicopter guy, that is not a good picture. Okay, because I'm never on my back line of helicopter. But the thing just kind of rumbles a little bit and falls off to the side. Really easy. So we did a bunch of stalls. Then he says, would you like to do a roll? I said, sure. So, and Mover, you know this in the R-44 and helicopters, you move the controls very lightly. So I've got the stick. He has me set the manifold pressure and the prop RPM. He handles mixture. I'm not to touch mixture. And I said, fine. So I take the stick and I move it about 1/4 of an inch. The airplane doesn't do anything. Homer goes, that's not what you do. And he slams the stick into my left thigh, and we whip around like crazy. And I said, whoa. And Homer goes, you got to move the stick. This is not a helicopter. So it was great. We did some loops, rolls, got to pull 4 Gs. Not bad.
Nice.
And yeah, he let me take it back. We flew, I guess you would call it a carrier break, came over. Okay. And he said, I'll be on the controls, but you can make the landing. I'm in the back. I can't friggin' see anything, you know. So I'm looking back, left and right, whatever. But the winds changed, came around to a quartering tailwind, and he took it. So, but it was so much friggin' fun that I had to do it 2 years later with another hour. And this time we did accelerated. We did accelerated stalls, and that aircraft does not like accelerated stalls. You put it into about a 10 degrees nose low, got up to about 280, yanked the stick back, thing starts shaking, you know, and the recovery for that is to just push the nose over. Don't let it fall. But we didn't do spans, but we did rolls and loops and implements. It was great. It was just super. And I didn't throw up.
Awesome. There you go.
Back, and when you sit in the back seat of that thing, you sit over the friggin' radiator. And I did this in October. I'm sweating like crazy. Got back, do a nice debrief. Crew chief is happy he didn't throw up in his aircraft, everything like that. And I was exhausted after both those flights. And it dawned on me, you know, in World War II, those 19-year-olds went out there, flew 6 or 7 hours to Berlin, whatever, fought against somebody who was trying to kill them, and then flew back. I didn't have that.
Yep.
I was just doing basic acrobatics, and I was exhausted. I couldn't believe that those guys could do that. Yeah. And
That's
the
awesome.
P-51 doesn't have speed brakes. If you want to slow down, you drop the flaps. That's what it does. But if you guys ever get a chance, yeah. So they have the course. You got to have 200 hours of tailwheel time to take the course. You get 15 hours of flight time and 40 hours of classroom. And then you get your letter of authorization that allows you to fly P-51 and get insurance. And I think it's about $45,000, $50,000. Yeah. They have L-39 there. They have T-6. So I've got, let's see, 215. I got about 230 hours to go before I can fly.
Hey, Gonky, there you go, man.
Really
You can live in your Airstream.
It'd have to be a Corsair, man. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the P-51. I really do.
Very
man.
professional.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dave, it has been an honor and a privilege to hear your story, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, fellas. I'll be glad to come
Thanks for
back
being
if
on
you
the
wish.
show.
I love listening.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You guys have great content. You really do. You really do. And just quickly, Gonky, what do you want different in the Super Hornet?
Well, more of everything is
in the
9 G's, my dude.
No, I don't. It doesn't need any more G. It needs. I always wish the Super Hornet had another 10,000 pounds of thrust. That's everything about that airplane was incredible. It just needed more power, or it just needed to be a little slipperier through the air. But other than that, it was pretty. I don't want to say perfect, but it's pretty darn good.
Awesome.
Neat.
Dave, it's been a pleasure. We thank you for being on the channel. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, fellas. And thanks for your service. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
See you, man.
All right. Good night, everybody.